You don't belong here. Get out. Bradley Thornton's finger stabbed toward the exit as he stepped directly into Amara Washington's path, his voice cutting through the boutique like a blade. The entire store froze. 911? I need the police. There's a suspicious black woman refusing to leave my store. Every customer stared in shock. Security cameras rolled. What happened next would expose the most dangerous assumption Bradley had ever made. The composed woman he just called the cops on wasn't backing down. She had a secret that would turn this humiliating moment into his worst nightmare. Within minutes, the man who thought he held all the power would be begging for mercy. This wasn't just shopping while black. This was about to become a lesson in how badly you can destroy your own life by judging the wrong person. The Grandview shopping district prided itself on being progressive. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Designer boutiques lined the corridors. Signs everywhere proclaimed, "Diversity welcome here," and "Community partnership certified." But pretty signs don't change ugly hearts. Amara Washington had walked these halls countless times, though today felt different. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being the only black face in expensive places. Her tailored blazer, designer handbag, and measured steps spoke of success, details that should have mattered but somehow never seemed to register with people like Bradley. She was here for one simple reason: finding the perfect anniversary gift for her husband. 15 years of marriage deserved something special, something that reflected how far they'd both come. The Cartier watch she'd spotted online would be perfect, elegant, timeless, exactly his style. Her phone buzzed again. Mayor's office flashed on the screen for the third time in 10 minutes. She declined the call, slipping the device back into her purse. Whatever crisis was brewing at City Hall could wait. This was her afternoon, her mission, her moment to focus on something purely personal. Bradley Thornton had managed Premier Jewelry for 15 years. 15 years of building what he called the right clientele. He knew quality when he saw it, or at least he thought he did. His definition of quality had very specific parameters that had earned him 3 discrimination complaints filed with corporate headquarters over the past 2 years. Each complaint had been quietly settled. Each settlement had taught Bradley one lesson: be more careful about witnesses. Today, he watched Amara through the store's mirrors, tracking her movement between display cases. She moved purposefully, examining pieces with the eye of someone who understood value. But Bradley saw something else entirely. He saw someone who didn't fit his mental image of who belonged in his store. The irony was suffocating. Behind the register, barely visible unless you looked closely, hung Premier Jewelry's Community Excellence Award, presented by the city government just 6 months ago for outstanding service to all residents. The mayor himself had handed Bradley that plaque, praising the store's commitment to treating every customer with dignity. If only Bradley had paid attention to who was standing behind that mayor during the ceremony. Amara selected the watch, a stunning piece worth $3,200. As she approached the counter, her wedding ring caught the light. It was elegant, understated, with a small detail that anyone paying attention might have recognized. The city seal etched discreetly into the band, a gift given only to the immediate families of elected officials. Bradley wasn't paying attention to details like that. He was too busy making assumptions. Other customers moved through the store. Mrs. Carter browsing earrings near the window, a young couple debating engagement rings, an elderly man examining cufflinks. Normal people living normal lives, about to witness something that would change how they saw their community forever. The store's security system captured everything from 6 different angles, high-definition cameras that Bradley had insisted on installing, proud of his sophisticated surveillance network. He loved showing customers and staff how the system worked, how it protected everyone, how nothing escaped its watchful eye. He never imagined those same cameras would soon be turned against him. Amara's phone buzzed again. This time the caller ID read, James Emergency. She glanced at the screen, hesitated, then declined again. Her husband understood that some moments belonged to them, not to the city. Their anniversary dinner was in 3 hours. The watch would be perfect. As she reached the counter, Bradley positioned himself strategically. He'd done this dance before. The subtle intimidation, the elevated scrutiny, the message sent without words that some people needed to prove they belonged. What he didn't know was that the woman standing before him had spent years proving herself in rooms far more hostile than his store. She'd faced down city councils, negotiated with developers, and earned respect from people who initially dismissed her. She'd also learned something valuable. Dignity maintained in the face of disrespect has a power that bullies never understand. Until it's too late. The afternoon was about to take a turn that would expose everything ugly hiding beneath Grandview's polished surface. And the man who thought he controlled the narrative was about to discover he'd picked the wrong woman to underestimate. Amara placed the Cartier watch on the counter with the gentle precision of someone who understood its value. The $3,200 price tag didn't make her blink. She'd researched the piece for weeks, knew it was perfect for James, knew they could easily afford it. Bradley's reaction was immediate and telling. Instead of the warm smile he'd given the white couple who'd just purchased a $900 necklace, his expression hardened into something cold and suspicious. "I'll need to see multiple forms of identification," he announced, his voice carrying across the store. Amara paused. In 15 years of luxury shopping, no one had ever made such a request for a simple credit card purchase. She glanced around, noting how other customers had stopped their browsing to listen. "Multiple forms?" she asked calmly. "For a credit card transaction?" "Store policy," Bradley replied, though the lie sat uncomfortably in the air. Mrs. Carter, still browsing near the window, looked up with obvious confusion. She'd bought a tennis bracelet here last month with just her credit card. No additional identification required. Amara opened her wallet with deliberate calm, producing her driver's license and American Express Black Card. Both items screamed financial stability. The license showed her address in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. The credit card represented a level of wealth most people never achieved. Bradley examined both documents as if they were forgeries, turning them over repeatedly, holding them up to the light. His performance was theatrical, designed to humiliate, designed to make Amara feel small and unwelcome. "These look unusual," he said finally, though both items were clearly authentic. "Unusual how?" Amara's voice remained steady, professional. She'd dealt with far more sophisticated attempts at intimidation. Bradley picked up his phone, pretending to dial a verification number. The charade was obvious to everyone watching, but he didn't care. He wanted witnesses to see him being thorough, being careful, protecting his store from the kind of person who didn't belong here. "Yes, I need to verify a credit card," he said loudly into the phone, though anyone paying attention could see he'd dialed his own voicemail. "American Express Black Card. Very suspicious circumstances." The young couple shopping for engagement rings exchanged uncomfortable glances. Mrs. Carter had stopped pretending to browse, her phone discreetly recording the scene unfolding before her. She'd seen enough discrimination in her 70 years to recognize it immediately. After his fake phone call, Bradley leaned across the counter with manufactured authority. "I'm going to need you to explain exactly what this purchase is for." A watch this expensive raises questions. The question hung in the air like poison. Other customers stared in disbelief. Explain what the purchase was for? Since when did jewelry stores interrogate customers about their reasons for buying jewelry? "It's an anniversary gift for my husband," Amara replied, her dignity intact despite the public humiliation. "Anniversary gift," Bradley repeated, his tone dripping with skepticism. "And you expect me to believe someone like you can afford a $3,000 watch for an anniversary gift?" "Someone like you." The words landed like a slap across every face in the store. Mrs. Carter's hand tightened around her phone. The young couple looked mortified. Even the elderly man by the cufflinks stopped what he was doing to stare. "Someone like me?" Amara asked quietly. Bradley doubled down, his prejudice now fully exposed. "Look, I don't know what kind of game you're running here, but this card could be stolen. These identification documents could be fake. I've seen it before." "You've seen what before exactly?" "People trying to use stolen credit cards to buy expensive jewelry. People who think they can walk into a store like mine and just take whatever they want." The accusation was clear. The racial profiling was undeniable. Every customer in the store understood exactly what Bradley was implying, and the silence was deafening. Amara's phone buzzed again. James's name appeared on the screen with a message. "Emergency City Council meeting moved up. Where are you? Need you here now." She glanced at the message, then looked back at Bradley, who had noticed the distraction and seemed to interpret it as guilt or nervousness. "Getting instructions from your accomplices?" he sneered. That was the moment Mrs. Carter stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "I've been shopping here for 10 years and I have never seen anyone treated this way. This woman has done absolutely nothing wrong." Bradley whirled around to face her. "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but I'm protecting all my customers by being thorough with suspicious transactions." "Suspicious?" Mrs. Carter's voice rose. "A well-dressed woman buying jewelry with her own credit card is suspicious? Since when?" Other customers began murmuring agreement. The young man shopping for engagement rings pulled out his own phone, joining Mrs. Carter in recording. The elderly customer moved closer, clearly upset by what he was witnessing. Bradley felt the room turning against him, but instead of backing down, he escalated. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave," he told Amara, pointing toward the exit with the same contemptuous gesture he'd used in the opening moments. "You're creating a disturbance." "I'm creating a disturbance?" Amara's composure finally showed the slightest crack. "By attempting to make a purchase. By refusing to accept that your business isn't wanted here. By causing a scene. By making my other customers uncomfortable." The accusation was so backwards, so divorced from reality, that Mrs. Carter actually gasped. "She's making us uncomfortable?" "You're the one making everyone uncomfortable." But Bradley was past caring about witnesses. He'd committed to his course of action, and his prejudice demanded he see it through. "Ma'am, if you don't leave voluntarily, I'm going to have to call the police." The threat hung in the air like a thunderclap. Call the police. On a woman whose only crime was shopping while black. Amara looked around the store, taking in the faces of the customers who had inadvertently become witnesses to this humiliating display. She saw anger in their eyes, but not directed at her. They were angry at what they were witnessing, angry at the injustice playing out before them. "You want to call the police?" she said slowly. "Because I attempted to buy jewelry with my own credit card. Because you're trespassing. Because you're disrupting my business. Because you don't belong here." Those words, "you don't belong here," would echo through the community for months to come. They would be quoted in newspaper articles, referenced in city council meetings, and remembered as the moment a bigot revealed his true nature to an audience he couldn't control. Bradley reached for his phone, his finger poised over the numbers that would summon police to remove a woman whose only offense was existing in his space while black. He had no idea that the woman he was about to have arrested was someone who could end his career with a single phone call. He had no idea that her husband was probably wondering why she hadn't responded to his emergency text. He had no idea that the security cameras he was so proud of were about to provide evidence that would destroy him. All he knew was that he'd drawn a line, and he was determined to enforce it. The phone call that would change everything was about to be made. Bradley's finger stabbed the phone with vindictive satisfaction as he dialed those 3 numbers that would seal his fate. 911? This is Bradley Thornton at Premier Jewelry in Grandview Shopping District. I need the police immediately. I have a suspicious black woman refusing to leave my store after I've asked her multiple times." The dispatcher's voice crackled through the phone. "Sir, what has this person done? She's attempting to use what I believe is a stolen credit card, became belligerent when questioned, and is now trespassing after being asked to leave. She's creating a disturbance and making my customers uncomfortable." Every word was a lie, and every customer in the store knew it. Mrs. Carter's phone captured the entire conversation. The young couple stared in horror. The elderly veteran shook his head in disgust at what he was witnessing. Amara remained perfectly still during Bradley's performance, her hands folded calmly on the counter beside the watch she'd simply wanted to purchase. Her phone buzzed again. Another call from City Hall that she couldn't take while being publicly humiliated and falsely accused. "Ma'am, I'm going to need the corporate customer service number for this store," she said quietly to a young sales associate who had emerged from the back room, drawn by the commotion. The associate, a college student named Sarah, looked terrified. She glanced between Bradley and Amara, clearly understanding that something very wrong was happening, but unsure how to respond. I'm not sure I'm allowed to." "Give it to her," Mrs. Carter demanded sharply. "This woman has every right to file a complaint about this treatment." Bradley ended his 911 call and turned his attention back to the situation. His chest puffed with the artificial authority of someone who thought he'd just solved a problem. "The police are on their way. I suggest you leave before they arrive and this becomes even more unpleasant for you." "I'm not going anywhere," Amara replied with quiet dignity. "I came here to make a legitimate purchase, and I've done nothing wrong." Other customers began speaking up, their voices overlapping in a chorus of support and outrage. "She's done nothing wrong. This is discrimination. I saw the whole thing. She was perfectly polite." But Bradley waved them off dismissively. "You don't understand the full situation. You don't see what I see. This is exactly the kind of problem that stores like mine have to deal with every day." The problem he was referring to, of course, was black people with money trying to shop in his store. Amara's phone buzzed with a text message. The preview showed James emergency and the first few words: "Budget crisis escalating. City Council in chaos." Where? She declined to read the rest, slipping the phone back into her purse. Whatever crisis was brewing at City Hall would have to wait. She had her own crisis to manage now. The first police car arrived within 6 minutes, its lights flashing but sirens silent. Officers Martinez and Johnson stepped out, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Domestic disputes and traffic stops were challenging enough without walking into what was clearly a racially charged situation in an upscale shopping district. Bradley immediately approached them with his version of events, speaking quickly and urgently as if he were reporting a major crime. "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly. This woman has been attempting to use fraudulent identification and credit cards. When I questioned her, she became hostile and refused to leave when asked." Officer Martinez, a 10-year veteran with sharp eyes and good instincts, looked around the scene. He noted the expensive store, the well-dressed customers, the woman in question standing calmly by the counter with perfect posture and no signs of agitation. Something didn't add up. "Ma'am," he said to Amara, "can I see your identification, please?" Amara produced her driver's license and credit card again, handing them over without drama or complaint. Officer Martinez examined both documents carefully, noting the high-end neighborhood address, the authentic security features, the perfect condition of both items. "These look legitimate to me," he said to his partner, Officer Johnson, who nodded in agreement. "Of course they look legitimate," Bradley interrupted. "These people are getting very sophisticated with their forgeries. That's exactly why we need to be extra careful." Officer Martinez raised an eyebrow at the phrase, "these people," and exchanged a meaningful glance with his partner. They'd both been to sensitivity training. They both knew a racial profile when they heard one. "Sir," Officer Martinez said to Bradley, "what specifically made you think these documents were fraudulent?" Bradley's answer revealed everything. Well, look at her. Look at what she's trying to buy. It just doesn't add up. Look at her. The words hung in the air like an admission of guilt. Officer Martinez had been wondering if this was a legitimate fraud case or a discrimination complaint. Bradley had just answered that question definitively. Meanwhile, Mrs. Carter continued recording, capturing every exchange, every facial expression, every moment of this spectacular display of prejudice meeting the justice system. The footage would soon become evidence in ways that Bradley couldn't imagine. Officer Johnson stepped closer to Amara, noting her calm demeanor, her expensive clothing, her professional bearing. "Ma'am, is there someone you'd like us to contact?" Family members, or... Before Amara could answer, another police car pulled into the parking lot. The shift supervisor had decided this situation needed additional oversight. Sergeant Williams stepped out of his patrol car, took one look at the scene, and immediately recognized something that would change everything. He recognized the woman standing at the center of this mess. His face went pale as he walked toward the group, his mind racing through the implications of what he was seeing. "Mrs. Washington," he called out, his voice carrying a mix of confusion and growing alarm. "What's going on here?" The moment those words left his mouth, Bradley's confident expression began to crack. The name Mrs. Washington cut through the tension like a blade through silk. Bradley's confident expression faltered for the first time, his eyes darting between Sergeant Williams and Amara with the first flicker of uncertainty he'd shown all afternoon. "Sergeant Williams," Amara replied with evident relief, her professional composure intact despite the ordeal. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. I came here to purchase an anniversary gift, and this gentleman has accused me of credit card fraud and called the police." Williams approached the group with growing concern, his 20-year career giving him instant read on the situation. He'd worked security detail for city events, had seen Amara Washington dozens of times at official functions. More importantly, he knew exactly who she was married to. "Ma'am, are you injured? Has anyone threatened you?" His questions were direct, professional, and loaded with implications that made Officer Martinez straighten his posture. "I'm fine, Sergeant. Just disappointed that a simple shopping trip has escalated this far." Bradley tried to reassert control, stepping forward with forced authority. "Officers, I don't know who this woman claims to be, but she was attempting to use suspicious identification and became belligerent when questioned. I had every right to." "Suspicious identification?" Sergeant Williams cut him off, his voice carrying the edge of someone who'd just heard something unbelievable. "Did you verify these documents?" "Well, They looked unusual, and someone like her trying to buy expensive jewelry raises obvious questions about someone like her." Williams's tone went ice cold. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Before Bradley could dig his hole deeper, the sound of screeching tires announced another arrival. A black BMW sedan pulled up with urgent precision, and a tall, well-dressed black man stepped out, moving with the purposeful stride of someone accustomed to command. James Washington had left an emergency city council session the moment he'd received Amara's text. "Situation at Premier Jewelry. Need you here now." The mayor surveyed the scene with sharp eyes. Police cars, his wife surrounded by officers, store customers with phones out recording everything. His expression shifted from concern to barely controlled anger as he pieced together what had obviously happened. "Amara," he said, reaching her side in 3 quick strides, "are you all right?" "What's going on here?" The moment he spoke, every police officer snapped to attention. Officer Martinez and Johnson immediately recognized the mayor they'd seen on television, at community events, at police department ceremonies. Sergeant Williams stepped forward with obvious respect. "Mayor Washington, sir. We responded to a call about a disturbance. Your wife was..." "My wife was what?" James Washington's voice carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to getting straight answers to direct questions. Bradley watched this exchange with growing horror. the pieces finally falling into place. The mayor. Mayor Washington. The woman he'd just humiliated, accused of fraud, and had arrested was the mayor's wife, the first lady of his city. The woman whose husband controlled city contracts, business licenses, and could make or break any retail establishment in the district with a single policy change. His face went ashen, then pale, then completely white as the full magnitude of his mistake hit him like a freight train. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding," he stammered, his voice suddenly small and desperate. "If I had known who she was..." "If you had known who she was?" James Washington turned his full attention to Bradley for the first time, and the store manager seemed to shrink under his gaze. "Are you suggesting that her treatment should depend on who she's married to rather than basic human decency?" Mrs. Carter stepped forward, her phone still recording. "Mayor Washington, I witnessed the entire incident. Your wife conducted herself with perfect dignity while this man subjected her to public humiliation and racial profiling." The elderly veteran nodded emphatically. "Worst display of prejudice I've seen in years. Your wife never raised her voice, never caused any disturbance. This manager created the entire situation." James Washington's phone buzzed with notifications. The story was already hitting social media. Videos from multiple angles were being uploaded with hashtags like #shoppingwhileblack and #mayorswife. The incident was going viral in real time. "Officers," the mayor said quietly, "I want every piece of security footage from this store preserved as evidence. I want witness statements from every customer present, and I want a full report on my desk first thing tomorrow morning." "Yes, sir," Sergeant Williams replied immediately. "We'll handle everything properly." Bradley tried desperately to salvage the situation, his prejudice now replaced by pure panic. "Mayor Washington, please, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. If I had realized, your wife is always welcome in my store. Always. This was just a miscommunication." "A miscommunication?" Amara spoke for the first time since her husband's arrival, her voice carrying steel beneath silk. "You told me I didn't belong here. You accused me of credit card fraud. You called the police and falsely reported me as a criminal. Which part was miscommunication?" The crowd that had gathered, customers, passers-by, people drawn by the police cars, began murmuring as they recognized the mayor and realized what they were witnessing. Phones appeared everywhere, capturing Bradley's humiliation from every angle. James Washington pulled out his own phone and made a call that everyone could hear. "Sarah, it's James. I need you to pull our city contracts with Premier Jewelry immediately." "Yes, all of them. We'll be reviewing our vendor relationships in light of recent events." Bradley's knees nearly buckled. The city contracts represented nearly 30% of his store's annual revenue. Corporate gifts, employee recognition awards, official ceremonies. Losing those contracts would be catastrophic. "Please," he begged, his voice cracking, "please don't punish the entire store for my mistake." "I was just trying to protect..." "Protect what?" James Washington asked coldly. "Protect your store from a well-dressed woman making a legitimate purchase? Protect your customers from seeing a black woman treated with basic respect?" The mayor's phone rang. Channel 7 News appeared on the caller ID. Then Channel 4. Then the city paper. The story was exploding across social media faster than wildfire. Bradley realized with sickening clarity that his career was over. His reputation was destroyed. His prejudice had been exposed to the entire city, captured on video from multiple angles, and he'd chosen the worst possible target for his discrimination. The woman he'd tried to humiliate with his assumptions about who belonged in his store was someone who could and would hold him accountable in ways he'd never imagined. The tables hadn't just turned, they'd been completely obliterated. Mayor Washington's first action wasn't revenge, it was preservation of evidence. "Sergeant Williams, I need every security camera in this store secured immediately. Nothing gets deleted, nothing gets modified. This is now a matter of public record." "Already on it, sir," Williams replied. approaching the store's security office with purpose. "We'll need the master recordings from all angles." Bradley watched in growing panic as his own surveillance system, the cameras he'd been so proud of, the high-definition network he'd bragged about to customers, became the instrument of his destruction. Every angle of his humiliation of Amara Washington was captured in crystal clarity. Mrs. Carter stepped forward, her phone still recording. "Mayor Washington, I have everything on video from the moment your wife approached the counter. This man's behavior was absolutely disgraceful." "Thank you, Mrs. Carter." "We'll need that footage for the investigation." James Washington's voice remained professionally calm, but his eyes burned with controlled fury. "Officers, I want witness statements from every person who observed this incident." The young couple who'd been shopping for engagement rings approached nervously. "Sir, we saw everything," the woman said. "Your wife was nothing but polite and professional. That manager was completely out of line." "She did absolutely nothing to provoke this," her fiancé added. "We couldn't believe what we were watching." Bradley tried one more desperate attempt at damage control. "Please, everyone, let's just calm down. This has all been blown out of proportion. Mrs. Washington, surely we can resolve this privately, professionally." "Privately?" Amara's voice cut through his pleading like ice. "You made this very public when you announced to your entire store that people like me don't belong here. You made it public when you called 911 and falsely reported me as a criminal. There's nothing private about public humiliation." James Washington's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Regional Manager, Premier Jewelry Corporate. Word was traveling up the corporate chain faster than Bradley could process. "Mr. Washington? This is Sarah Kim, Regional Manager for Premier Jewelry. I'm calling about an incident at one of our locations. I'm en route now. Can you please stay so we can address this situation immediately?" "We'll be here," the mayor replied tersely. Bradley's face went even paler, if that was possible. Sarah Kim was his direct supervisor, the woman who controlled his employment, his future, his entire career. She was driving here personally, which meant corporate headquarters already knew about the viral videos spreading across social media. Within 20 minutes, a sleek silver Mercedes pulled up outside the store. Sarah Kim emerged like a woman on a mission, her expression grim as she took in the scene. Police cars, crowds of people with phones, news vans already arriving as word spread through the city. She walked directly to Mayor Washington, extending her hand with obvious respect. "Mayor Washington, I'm Sarah Kim. I cannot express how horrified I am by what I've been told happened here today." "Ms. Kim, I appreciate you coming so quickly. This situation has exposed some serious problems that need immediate attention." Sarah Kim turned to Bradley, her expression cold as Arctic wind. "Bradley, my office, now." As they disappeared into the store's back office, the crowd outside continued growing. Local news crews set up equipment. Customers from other stores gathered to see what was happening. Social media exploded with hashtags and outrage. Inside the office, Sarah Kim pulled up the security footage on her laptop, her face growing darker with each passing moment. The videos showed everything. Bradley's suspicious scrutiny, his fake phone call, his escalating accusations, his public humiliation of a customer whose only crime was shopping while black. 15 years, she said quietly. 15 years you've worked for this company, and this is how you represent us. Sarah, please, if I had known who she was... If you had known who she was... Kim's voice rose sharply. "Bradley, do you hear yourself? Are you saying this behavior would be acceptable if directed at someone without political connections?" Bradley opened his mouth to respond, but Kim wasn't finished. "I have 3 formal discrimination complaints against you in my files, Bradley. 3 separate incidents where customers reported feeling unwelcome, profiled, treated differently because of their race. Each time, the corporation settled quietly to avoid publicity. Each time, you promised this would never happen again. Those were misunderstandings. This wasn't a misunderstanding." Kim slammed her laptop shut. This was you on camera telling a black woman she doesn't belong in our store. This was you falsely accusing a customer of fraud. This was you calling the police on someone whose only offense was attempting to make a purchase. Outside the office, the investigation continued. Sergeant Williams interviewed every witness, documenting a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior. Officer Martinez reviewed the security footage, noting how Amara's demeanor remained calm and professional throughout the entire ordeal. The elderly veteran who'd witnessed everything approached Mayor Washington. "Sir, I served this country for 30 years. I've seen discrimination, and I've seen dignity under fire. Your wife displayed the kind of grace under pressure that would make any husband proud." "Thank you for saying that," James replied. "And thank you for speaking up when it mattered." Mrs. Carter had taken it upon herself to coordinate with other witnesses, ensuring everyone's contact information was available for the investigation. "Mayor Washington, I want you to know that this doesn't represent our community. Most of us were horrified by what we witnessed." The store's young sales associate, Sarah, approached tentatively. "Mr. Mayor, sir, I just want you to know that a lot of us who work here have been uncomfortable with Mr. Bradley's behavior for a long time, but we didn't know how to report it, and we were afraid of losing our jobs." This revelation added another layer to the investigation. Corporate would need to examine not just Bradley's actions, but the culture of fear he'd apparently created among his own staff. Back in the office, Sarah Kim was reviewing Bradley's personnel file on her phone, reading corporate policy violations that painted a picture of an employee who'd been protected too long by quiet settlements and internal warnings. "The diversity training you were required to complete last year, you never finished it. The customer service workshops designed to address previous complaints, you attended 1 session out of 6. The cultural sensitivity seminar that was mandatory for all management staff, you requested an exemption." Bradley had no response. Each violation Kim cited was documented, time-stamped, part of a pattern that could no longer be ignored. "You're suspended immediately pending a full investigation," Kim announced. "Security will escort you out. You're not to return to any company property while this investigation is ongoing." "Sarah, please, I have a family, a mortgage." "You should have thought about your family before you decided to publicly humiliate the mayor's wife on camera," Kim replied coldly. "You should have considered your mortgage before you turned our store into a viral symbol of discrimination." When they emerged from the office, the scene outside had grown even more chaotic. News crews from 3 local stations had arrived. A reporter was interviewing Mrs. Carter about what she'd witnessed. Another crew was setting up for a live broadcast. Sarah Kim approached Mayor Washington with obvious contrition. "Sir, on behalf of Premier Jewelry Corporate, I want to offer our sincerest apologies. This behavior is completely contrary to our company values and policies." "I appreciate that, Ms. Kim. But apologies aren't enough. This incident has revealed systemic problems that need systemic solutions." Kim nodded emphatically. "Absolutely. We're implementing immediate changes. Mandatory bias training for all staff, revised hiring practices, new reporting mechanisms for discrimination complaints, and regular corporate oversight of all locations." "That's a start," James Washington replied. "But the real test will be whether these changes stick after the cameras leave." As Bradley was escorted out of the store by security, he walked past the crowd that had gathered to witness his downfall. Phones captured his face, his humiliation, his complete reversal of fortune. The man who'd wielded imaginary power over who belonged in his store was now being expelled from it himself. The irony was perfect, and everyone present understood it completely. Amara Washington finally spoke to the gathered crowd, her voice carrying the dignity that had never wavered throughout this ordeal. "What happened here today shouldn't happen to anyone, anywhere. But I'm grateful that it happened in front of witnesses who cared enough to speak up. That's what community means, standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable." The crowd erupted in applause, but Amara raised her hand for quiet. "This isn't about me or my husband's position or corporate settlements. This is about basic human dignity and the right of every person to be treated with respect regardless of their appearance or background. Mrs. Carter wiped tears from her eyes as she listened. The young couple held hands, moved by witnessing both hatred and grace in the same afternoon. The veteran stood at attention, recognizing true leadership when he heard it. As the news crews prepared their reports and social media continued exploding with outrage and support, one thing was clear. Bradley's moment of prejudice had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. His attempt to humiliate had instead revealed the dignity of his target and the ugliness of his own heart. The investigation would continue. The corporate changes would be implemented, and the legal consequences would follow. But the most important outcome was already visible in the faces of everyone who'd witnessed this confrontation. A community reminded that discrimination has consequences, and that standing up to prejudice still matters. Justice, it turned out, sometimes came with cameras rolling and the whole world watching. 1 week later, the corporate investigation concluded with swift and decisive action. Sarah Kim sat in her regional office, reviewing the final report that would end Bradley Thornton's career permanently. "The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable," she announced during a conference call with corporate headquarters and legal counsel. "Security footage, witness statements, social media documentation, and a history of previous complaints create a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior." The decision was unanimous. Bradley Thornton was terminated immediately for gross violation of company policy, discrimination, and creating a hostile environment for both customers and staff. The termination letter, which would soon be read aloud at a city council meeting, stated clearly, "Premier Jewelry maintains a zero-tolerance policy regarding discrimination. Mr. Thornton's actions were reprehensible, contrary to our company values, and caused immeasurable damage to our reputation and community standing." But corporate accountability was just the beginning. Mayor Washington used the incident as a catalyst for comprehensive reform. The City Council, meeting in an emergency session, voted unanimously to strengthen anti-discrimination ordinances with real teeth, mandatory bias training for all businesses holding city contracts, independent complaint review boards, and financial penalties for establishments found guilty of discriminatory practices. This incident exposed gaps in our system that allowed prejudice to flourish unchecked, Mayor Washington announced at the packed council meeting. "We're implementing changes that ensure this never happens again to anyone in our community." The reforms were swift and comprehensive. Every business with city contracts would undergo quarterly discrimination training. Anonymous reporting systems were established with direct lines to the Civil Rights Commission. Most importantly, discrimination complaints would be handled by independent investigators, not internal corporate committees. Mrs. Carter became an unlikely hero of the story, her video footage serving as crucial evidence in the corporate investigation. More than that, she used her experience to launch a community watch program specifically focused on documenting and reporting discrimination in public spaces. "I've lived through enough injustice to recognize it immediately," she told a packed community center meeting. "But I've also lived long enough to know that staying silent makes you complicit. We all have phones. We all have voices. We all have the power to stand up." Her program trained volunteers to safely document discrimination incidents, connect victims with legal resources, and create a network of community accountability that extended far beyond corporate policies. The store itself underwent dramatic changes. New management implemented comprehensive bias training for all staff. Sarah, the young sales associate who'd been afraid to speak up, was promoted to assistant manager after revealing how Bradley's intimidation had silenced employee concerns for years. "The new policies make it safe to report problems," she explained during a local news follow-up story. "Everyone deserves to feel comfortable shopping here, and everyone who works here deserves to feel safe doing the right thing." 3 months after the incident, Premier Jewelry hosted a community reconciliation event, inviting local leaders, customers, and civil rights advocates to see their transformation firsthand. The store's sales had initially plummeted after viral videos showed Bradley's discrimination, but had recovered as the community recognized genuine change. Most importantly, the incident sparked conversations throughout the city about unconscious bias, systemic discrimination, and the responsibility of bystanders to intervene when they witness injustice. Local churches organized discussion groups. Schools incorporated the incident into social studies curricula. Business associations mandated sensitivity training that went beyond legal compliance to address the underlying prejudices that create hostile environments. The ripple effects extended beyond policy changes to cultural shifts. Restaurant servers found themselves more conscious of how they treated customers of different races. Retail workers questioned their own assumptions about who belonged in their stores. Even ordinary citizens became more willing to speak up when they witnessed discrimination. As for Amara and James Washington, they finally celebrated their anniversary properly. The Cartier watch, purchased from a different jeweler, became more than just a gift. It became a symbol of dignity maintained under pressure, of grace triumphing over hatred, of a community's capacity for growth and change. The most powerful moment came during the mayor's annual State of the City address, when Amara joined him on stage to present the first annual Community Courage Awards to Mrs. Carter, the young couple who'd testified as witnesses, and the veteran who'd spoken up for justice. Change doesn't happen in corporate boardrooms or city council chambers, Amara told the packed auditorium. Change happens when ordinary people decide that staying silent is no longer an option. Change happens when we choose dignity over convenience, courage over comfort. The audience erupted in sustained applause, but the real victory was visible in faces throughout the crowd, a community that had confronted its ugliest impulses and chosen to become better. Bradley Thornton's moment of prejudice had backfired completely, creating the very change he'd tried to prevent. A more inclusive, more accountable, more just community where everyone truly belonged. Justice served, lessons learned, progress made. The system had worked, but only because people made it work. 6 months later, the transformation was complete and undeniable. Premier Jewelry had become a model for inclusive business practices, hosting diversity workshops and mentoring other retailers struggling with similar issues. The Community Watch program Mrs. Carter launched had expanded to 12 neighboring cities, creating a network of accountability that spanned the entire metropolitan area. But the most meaningful change was personal. Amara and James Washington finally had their perfect anniversary celebration. Not just the dinner they'd planned, but the knowledge that their experience had created lasting change for countless others who might have faced similar discrimination. The Cartier watch, purchased from a jeweler who treated every customer with equal respect, kept perfect time and carried perfect meaning. Each glance at its face reminded them that dignity maintained under pressure has power beyond imagination. The store itself told the story of redemption through action rather than words. New staff training programs, diverse hiring practices, community partnerships with local civil rights organizations. Most importantly, a culture where speaking up for what's right was celebrated rather than feared. Bradley Thornton never found work in retail again. His viral humiliation followed him to every job interview, every background check, every Google search of his name. The lesson was harsh but clear. Actions have consequences, and some mistakes can't be undone. But this story isn't about punishment. It's about progress. It's about communities that refuse to accept discrimination as normal. It's about individuals who choose courage over comfort when witnessing injustice. It's about systems that actually work when people demand accountability. Mrs. Carter, now 71, speaks at universities about the power of bearing witness. I survived the Cultural Revolution by staying silent, she tells packed auditoriums. But I chose to thrive in America by speaking up. Every one of you has that choice. The young couple whose engagement ring shopping became an education in civil rights? They got married in a ceremony that celebrated not just their love, but their commitment to building a more just world for their future children. The veteran who spoke up for Amara now volunteers with organizations supporting discrimination victims. I didn't serve my country for 30 years to watch fellow Americans get treated like second-class citizens, he explains to anyone who will listen. The statistics tell the story. Discrimination complaints in the city dropped by 60% as businesses realized they were being watched, documented, and held accountable. Anonymous reporting increased by 300% as people found safe ways to report problems. But numbers don't capture the human impact. The black teenagers who now shop without fear. The elderly immigrants who feel welcome in stores that once ignored them. The LGBTQ+ customers who find acceptance instead of hostility. This transformation happened because ordinary people decided that staying silent was no longer acceptable. It happened because witnesses became advocates. It happened because a community chose growth over comfort. The lesson is simple but profound. Your voice matters. Your phone can document injustice. Your courage can create change. Your actions can transform communities. Have you witnessed discrimination and stayed silent? Have you seen injustice and looked away? Have you watched someone being treated unfairly and chosen convenience over courage? Every day presents opportunities to stand up, speak out, and make a difference. Every interaction is a chance to build the kind of community where everyone belongs. What will you choose the next time you see someone being treated unfairly? Will you be another silent witness, or will you be part of the solution? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us about times you've witnessed discrimination and what you did about it. If this story opened your eyes or changed your perspective, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about courage, justice, and the power of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Remember, change doesn't happen in boardrooms or government offices. Change happens when people like you decide that enough is enough. What will your moment look like?
At Black Voices Uncut, we don't polish away the pain or water down the message. We tell it like it is because the truth deserves nothing less. If today's story spoke to you, click like, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe so you'll be here for the next Uncut Voice.